I want to welcome you to the Retro Rogues Live. Please pay attention to our winning graphic. It states that the Retro Rogues Live show is intended for an adult audience and not intended for children under the age of 13. Parental discretion is advised. You know, there's just something about when I deliver that line, it always makes me think of Raul Julia from Street Fighter. If you had if you had worked together, you might have been successful. All right, enough about that. On tonight's show, we're going to be talking about the passing of Sally Kellerman. We're going to be talking about also the ongoing saga of Star Trek 4. Wasn't that like the one with the whales? I don't know. We'll see. There's something going on. Eric knows more about it than I do. We're also going to discuss the possibility that the Defenders are going to be defending Disney Plus now. That'll be weird. That'll be interesting. All that and so much more on tonight's episode of the Retro Rogues Live. My name is Dave Beatty. I am one of your hosts. For nearly the last 30 years, I've been a professional illustrator and graphic designer. Worked on a lot of fun things that some people have heard of, such as Batman Incorporated, Justice League of America. And for tonight's show, let's say iVampire, because it's red in the back, and it makes you think of spooky things. But enough about that. I want to welcome back, as always, my great co-host. This is Mr. Eric Alexander. Eric, please tell the folks who'll be watching or listening at home some of the fun things you have worked on as a creative professional.
Yes, I'm Eric Alexander, also known as Bass God 14. That's Bass God 14, not Bass God. That's Bass God, like a bass guitar. And I am the Chief Financial Officer of Bad Bob Productions, which is a film production company located in Arizona. Currently, I am one of the executive producers of a film called Staycation, which is gearing up to do some additional filming in California, looking like the end of March or possibly, April. So we're gearing up.
All right, there you go. There you go. We got some fun people over here in the Rogues Gallery already, lighting it up. Hi, David Motz. He says, hello, everyone.
Hey, Motz.
We also have the beautiful Miss Asia, who's saying, hello, darlings.
You've got to say it like darlings.
Darlings. I can't say it like she does. That's part
no
of
one
her,
can say it like she does.
That's part of her magic.
It is part of her magic, absolutely.
Right,
and it's good. It's great to see Asia.
Yeah. And we also have Hollywood in the chat. Hi, Hollywood.
Yeah, and actually he's saying hi to everybody. So
everybody.
Great
except
to see
us. You. Except us. I feel left out.
Priorities, man. Priorities.
Hey,
he's got us covered. Hey guys. Hi guys. There we go.
All right, very cool. All right, so where do we want to start? Because I know we kind of have some.
Well, I did want to put some show business out there because there are things happening in the world right now that are very serious, and we understand some people might be, glued to the television right now. It's kind of one of those moments. I know it was for me. I was up all night last night watching stuff. But we at the Retro Rogues, we are obviously apolitical, but we understand that sometimes things are going on. And, we're here to kind of give you a little bit of that, that distraction, and a little bit of not having to, I guess, deal with those things for a little while. But at the same time, we want to be respectful of that situation, right? So, we just want to put that out there. We know that some people, probably their minds are elsewhere tonight, but we're going to do our best to give you a little bit of distraction tonight, although we are going to start out with kind of a bummer, right? So, because we do follow, obviously, celebrity deaths that particularly resonate with either one of us or both of us, and we are going to have to deal with that tonight. So,
so maybe we should just kind of start there.
We did have one more person in the Rogues Gallery to acknowledge, which of course is the great Robert McVeigh, my partner, the chief executive officer of Bad Bob Productions, and it's great to see you, Rob. And he says, "What up, big dogs?" So, what up with you, Robert?
All right, very cool. Hi, Rob. So we're going to start off tonight's show actually talking about the passing of Sally Kellerman. She did just recently pass. And then I think they said what I read said she was 82.
84. I've got the Variety
84.
article here.
84,
if you don't mind, I'll just hit
right
a couple of the high points or low points, if you will. It's always tragic when somebody passes. So Sally Kellerman, Oscar nominated as Hot Lips Houlihan in MASH, dies at 84. I always think it's interesting what the mainstream if you will. We'll credit an actor, actress for it, because as we'll get to it, I think we know. Well, Dave and I know what it is we want to focus on. But yes, she was Oscar nominated as Hot Lips Houlihan in the MASH film. For people that might be confused by that, by the way, because at first I was as well, because it's like, wait a second. Oh, that's right. There were two actresses who played Houlihan, one in the movie and one in the TV series. So Sally Kellerman, who was Oscar nominated for a supporting role as Margaret Hot Lips Houlihan in Robert Altman's MASH feature film, died Thursday in Woodland Hills, California. She was 84. Her publicist did confirm her death. It says among her other roles were a cameo in Altman's The Player, a professor in Rodney Dangerfield's Back to School, and a Starfleet officer in the Star Trek episode Where No Man Has Gone Before. I will just refer folks to this article. It does talk about her extensive career, which I had no idea she was in this many different things. She did guest star a lot on television shows. Obviously, we're probably going to be focusing on Star Trek, but yeah, she was in a lot of classic shows over her career, but also she was in a lot of movies, and her career is extensive. Like goes all the way back to the 1950s, and this article covers a lot of it. It does kind of near the end say the actress worked mostly in television during the 1960s, appearing notably as Dr. Elizabeth Denner in an episode of the original Star Trek series called Where Man Has Gone Before. Other TV credits during this period include Twilight Zone, The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis, My Three Sons, The Outer Limits, The Alfred Hitchcock Hour, I Spy, That Girl, Hawaii Five-0, and Mannix. So definitely a lot of classic TV appearances during that time period that even go beyond Star Trek. And in the 50s, I guess she started actually in like feature films.
Yeah, so the big one for me is going to be her playing Dr. Elizabeth Daner in Star Trek. That is the first episode that basically was the one that sealed the deal to actually get the series actually on the air. Even though I think when they actually aired the Man Trap first, if I remember correctly. I could be mistaken about that.
I always get confused on the names. In fact, remember I flubbed it in our pre-show. I got the wrong name of the episode that she was in. But the first episode that aired is the one with the salt monster.
Yeah,
and I always think it's interesting.
That's the Man Trap.
Yeah, I always think it's interesting because then they aired this, I think, actually as the third episode.
Yeah.
And of course, McCoy is not the doctor in this episode. It's not her either. For those of you that are confused, she's the counselor, in the episode that she appeared on. But there is a doctor, and it's not McCoy. And I always wonder how audience at the time must have been like, hey, what happened to the doctor? Right? What happened to their uniforms? Their uniforms are different. The phasers are different. Everything's different, right?
Yeah, everything's different.
Because of course, this, in terms of the actual filming, this was the second pilot, right? This was the second pilot. And I always think it's a fascinating story because, hardcore Trek fans, Trekkies like myself, this, but sometimes we might forget, or we might get new viewers who don't remember this, or people that came in at, much later in Star Trek. They might be new Star Trek, new Trek fans and never even saw the original series. But, the funny thing about it, of course, is the first pilot didn't sell. It was in many ways radically different than what we came to know as Star Trek, with a very different cast. Leonard Nimoy was the only cast member that made it to the one that got on the air. And it's very interesting because this is the pilot that sold the series, the one that she was in. As much as I think the original pilot is beloved by fans, including myself, and it's always a great what if in my mind, right? And it's actually going to be the basis of Strange New Worlds, right? I mean, that the original pilot is very much the basis of Strange New Worlds, the new Trek series is going to be coming out soon. But this is what started the original Star Trek. That's the original Star Trek in my heart, right? This is the the William Shatner version, that kind of stuff. And one of the things I think is so interesting about her character is this is also in many ways the genesis of Troy. And a lot of people forget that in this pilot, this second pilot, they did have a counselor, and that's what her character was. She was a counselor. And I always think it's interesting because, spoiler alert. should I put the banner up for this, almost ancient episode? But I'll put it up anyway. Her character dies, and interestingly enough, they never replace her, but they also never replaced the first officer. That's kind of part of the Trek lore too. That's the reason Spock, the science officer, is second in command, is because the first officer died. So lots of Trek lore in this appearance. Lots of good stuff. If you're a Trekkie, you got to check this out if you haven't already.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite episodes of Star Trek. I have always loved Where No Man Has Gone Before. And to me, it's always so interesting too, because I remember seeing this and it was even more jarring because the first time I saw this episode was in a rerun on a black and white television. But you could still tell that everything was different. Like, why are the uniforms different? Why are the phasers different? Like, some of the stuff within the ship, like, is different. Like, it was really I remember kind of interesting that it was just kind of slightly out of sync, with what we think of. But I always really, really liked this one. And Sally Kellerman was great as Dr. Elizabeth Daner. You had the spoiler banner up. You put it back up. If that's okay.
No problem.
What happens, for those of us who might need a reminder who haven't seen it in a little while, and I have seen it actually fairly recently, is that they basically go through this barrier at the edge of the universe, and they're basically hit by this weird energy. And the energy actually affects two people primarily. It affects Gary Mitchell, who is Commander Gary Mitchell, who is the first officer, as Eric said, of the USS Enterprise, and Dr. Elizabeth Daner. And we don't really we can see that she's been affected, but we don't see her manifest her abilities until much later in the episode. And it's a real kind of like, what is it? Power corrupting, what is it? Shatner's got that great line where he's talking to her and he's like, do you like what you see? Absolute power. Was it absolute power corrupting? Absolutely. Exactly. What's your prognosis, doctor? Like, I love all that stuff. Like, there's a lot of really fun acting. It's a really, really fun sci-fi episode. She's fantastic in it. And it's interesting too, because like you said, Eric, it's so important to Trek history because this is the reason that, Spock is also the first officer, because they lost their first officer at the beginning of their mission.
Right. Very important to Trek lore. I'm a lore guy, so.
And it's interesting too, because we learned so much about actually Kirk in this episode too. The fact that he and, Gary Mitchell went to the academy together, and that they share a friendship, and then that they end up being turned against each other because of this thing that's manipulating Gary Mitchell. It's really, really a great episode. But no, yeah, it's always sad when you lose, a great actor or a great actress. But in this case, it's even more sad because this is also like we're losing a little bit of Trek history at the same time.
And I do want to say, a lot of times when these things happen, especially with an actor that's older and has this sort of esteemed career that I didn't even know about, one of the things it does do is it makes me think, hey, I need to find out which Twilight Zone episode she was on. I need to find out what Outer Limits episode she was on. And it makes me kind of want to go back and check that out. And it's so easy to do these days. If you go on IMDb, you can figure that stuff out. Even if you do like Google searches at this point, you could probably figure all that stuff out. So I do want to throw that out there. That's always, I think, a great tribute. When an actor passes, go check out some of their work. If you've never seen the Star Trek episode, you've got to go see that. I mean, that's just a no-brainer. I mean, it's so important, again, not just to Trek lore, but to the history of the show. Again, this is the quote unquote second pilot. This is what sold the series. The first pilot was a failure in terms of, getting the suits on board. This is what got the suits on board. This is possibly even what got Lucille Ball on board. I've always heard different stories about Lucille Ball's, the extent of her involvement. And some of the stories I've heard from actual actors is that she was much more hands-on than people realize, because it was Desilu, and people forget that. And so, this is the show that sold the series. This is the episode that really made Star Trek what it is. You've got Shatner, you've got Takei, you've got Doohan, you know what I mean? You've got Leonard, got Nimoy. They all appear in this episode as well. You know what I mean? So it's like it's all there. By the way, it's also interesting because I think Sulu originally he was like the botanist or something like that, right? I think you might remember that better than me, but I think he was not like technically like bridge crew. I think he was like the botanist in that episode.
Well, and if I remember correctly, actually, Eric, I think George Takei actually in doing, I think they might have even been in the original Menagerie pilot too. The Cage. I think he because
no. The only actor that's remained in the same role is Nimoy.
Right.
There, of course, is one other actor, that made it through, but in a completely different, different role, which of course is Majel, Rottenberry, who
I could have swore
became Nurse
Chapel.
Chapel.
They were in the Cage.
Yeah, this one I do know. So what I mean, I'm just, but the interesting thing is, again, in the original appearance of Sulu, he's not the helmsman. You know what I mean?
No.
He's not the helmsman or navigator.
Yeah.
He has a completely different position on the ship, which I always just think is interesting. Again, I'm a lore guy. I love sort of the history of Trek and all that kind of stuff. But that's the way my fandom is in general. I love lore. I love the history. I love world building. That kind of stuff.
So it's like I said, it's always sad when we lose a great actor or a great actress. And I do remember actually seeing her in, I think it was Back to School, and seeing her in actually quite a few things when I was going through her like filmography. But for me, the big one is always going to be, her turn as Dr. Elizabeth Daner in Star Trek.
Yeah, Robert McVeigh says it very simply, and you can't say it any better or give a better tribute, which is he says, great actress.
Yeah.
And also, Matthew reads in the house, and he just says hi to everybody. It's good to have you back on the show, Matt. It's been a while, I think, since you commented on the show, but we definitely want to hear your comments now, and thank you for joining us.
Hi, Matt.
And of course, Hollywood's got to get it in there. No Picard? Nope, no Picard, Hollywood.
No Picard.
There was no Picard at this point in Trek at all. So we're talking about
Picard in the end.
We were talking about a different era before the dark times. So, and we're gonna get to that later, right? Because with my story, we'll talk about what's going on in the state of Trek now. So stay tuned, you Trek fans.
I do have, unless anyone in the Rogues Gallery has any other comments that they want to make, I think we might move on. But Absolutely. Yeah, Eric's right. This is a really great opportunity actually to go look at her IMDb credits, see some of the other stuff that she's been in. If there's something that you remember watching and enjoying and go, oh yeah, I remember she was in that, this is an opportunity to watch it again. Or like Eric said, I didn't want to I don't remember which episode of Twilight Zone she's in or Outer Limits. But it would be worth definitely checking out because I'm genuinely curious because I do quite like Twilight Zone and Outer Limits.
And I've seen Back to School. I've actually saw it in the theater when it came out, and I can't remember what her part was. So,
yeah, I seem to remember that she was like one of the hot teacher, kind of deal, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong. That's what I seem to remember.
Go check it out, folks. Go check it out.
So, and then we haven't done like a collector's corner, and this isn't like a specifically collector's corner thing, but I thought I would mention it because I thought this was pretty cool. Let
me put up the banner. We haven't put it up in so long. Let me put up the graphic just because we haven't done any collector's corner in so long. So here we go. We're doing a collector's corner segment.
There you go. It'll be very brief though. Be very brief. I'm an action figure collector, much like Eric. I don't collect, a lot of newer stuff really. The big thing I've been keeping my eye on though is that Hot Toys Batman Forever Val Kilmer. Like I really want to get that, but I keep talking. I get that close to pushing the button and I talk myself out of it. Like, no, I shouldn't spend money on that. But anyhow,
how much does it cost?
I'm really struggling with that.
I'm just curious.
I think it's about $230, $240.
Yeah, I would have a real tough time justifying that. I really would.
Yeah, I have. That's the same thing. I'm in the same boat. I have a really, really tough time. The way I justify it, though, is that I've talked before. Batman Forever is one of my favorite Batman movies. And I'm a huge Kilmer fan. Between Top Gun and Tombstone and his turn as, Batman / Bruce Wayne, like I'm a big Kilmer fan. And I quite liked his version of Batman and Bruce Wayne. There's some hilarity and craziness going on in it, but if you pay attention to what Kilmer's doing, he plays it pretty straight, and he's trying very hard to be a great Batman and a very tortured Bruce Wayne, probably one of the more tortured Bruce Waynes that we've actually had in the Batman movies, I might point out. But anyhow, I think was it last? Yeah, it was last. Was it last episode? I think it was. Anyhow, I was asked out for Valentine's Day on a previous episode, and Asia actually got me a gift, and I thought it was really cool. So this is actually Tron. So,
oh wow,
isn't that cool?
That's sweet.
Yeah, it's really neat. I'm a huge fan of Tron. I love the film. And I just thought this was really cool. I had back in the day, talking about the retro stuff, I had the actual Tron figures, the ones that were like translucent, when I was a kid, and the light cycle that had the rip cord, that would you pull it and it would, whatever. I always thought those were really cool. And I have always loved Tron. Tron actually got me into computer graphics. I was heavily inspired actually by Tron to get into that. And there's a lot of interesting connections between this and our previous story, because Where No Man Has Gone Before heavily influenced the creation of Red Skirts, and Red Skirts uses a lot of CGI. And my whole interest in CGI and creating 3D models actually comes from Tron, because I was so mesmerized by what they did in Tron. So I just thought that'd be kind of neat. It's pretty cool. It's probably the newest action figure I think I've had in my collection in quite some time. And it's pretty cool. And it's funny because we haven't talked too much about it, but I have recently moved. My living situation has obviously changed a lot, but I've got a box, and I got to find my prototype Boba Fett, who's guest starred on the show several times, and I want to have him and Tron hanging out together over here on my desk. I just got to find
dig
him.
it.
So
I dig it.
Yeah.
Speaking of Asia, she says, I almost got the 2K figure thinking that was the one. Laugh out loud.
So that's a funny story. So I was telling her about that Batman Forever figure, and she's like, "Is this the one you're looking at?" And she sent me this link to this like freaking like $2,000 statue. I was like, "For the love of God, that is not what I'm talking about."
I was balking at the $200 just now.
I was like going, no
way, man, that's too much.
That you could buy much more important things with that kind of money. But it was funny though. I was like, no, it's very cool, but no, for the love of God, no. But anyhow, yeah.
That's crazy. So, Mott says he loves Tron. I am a Tron fan as well, Mott's. I had a friend that took me actually to the newer one, Legacy, and we actually saw it on the IMAX, which was pretty impressive.
Very cool.
That's definitely the kind of movie you want to watch in the IMAX. That's not the original one. That's the Legacy one.
Oh, yeah.
Robert McVeigh says that's cool. Digs the Tron toy there. Mott's also mentions I have some Tron comics.
Very cool.
I have to say I'm actually not familiar with the Tron comics like at all. But did you ever have any of those, Dave? Any of the Tron comics?
No, I don't have any Tron comics actually.
Yeah, I'm not really familiar with that one.
I would be curious to know, David, like who actually published those, because I can't remember like who might have published those, but that's interesting, because I mean I have like Thundercats and He-Man and G.I. Joe, like, I have a lot of stuff from kind of that era, things that I was into and stuff, but I didn't realize they did Tron comics. I'd be curious to know who. Yeah, it's like Voltron. They had Voltron comics back then too, but it was by a secondary company that a lot of people hadn't heard of. It wasn't like Marvel or DC.
A lot of the stuff, it's been around so long, it's actually changed hands several times. You know what I mean?
Right.
Star Wars is an obvious example. They've changed hands. Yes. They started out at Marvel, and now Then they went to Dark Horse, and we were talking about them going back to Dark Horse, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And then of course
Yep.
IDW does some of their stuff now too, you know what I
Yep.
mean? So it's all over the place.
Very
Gap
true.
is in the house. He says, "Hey guys,
Hi,
I'm
Gap.
rating you from my live stream." So Gap, are you live right now too? And now you're trolling us or something like that? I dig it. I dig it. Actually, if you were live, I didn't know, and I have no problem promoting other people's stuff, even when they're in direct competition, because Gap is obviously a very loyal person of the show. So we appreciate that. If you are rating us from your live stream, kudos to you. Actually, it is kind of it actually makes sense that he's talking to us during a Collector's Corner segment, because Gap does a lot of unboxing. If you folks are interested in that kind of stuff, if you like that kind of stuff, he does a lot of unboxing videos on his channel. I've watched several of them. He's got a lot of cool stuff. I think, Gap, you focus a lot more on modern, obviously, but you a lot of cool stuff that you do on your show. Maria's with us. Maria with T and Telly, and of course she does a show as well. I did retweet her show. She's doing one tomorrow, I think at 3 p.m. Pacific time, if I'm right. And she says, "Oh my God, Dave has a face."
I do. And it's going to be interesting too, because I am flirting with getting back into, because I used to dress up in costumes and do fun stuff, and I always loved that, and I kind of got away from it. And I am flirting with the idea of starting to wear costumes again when I go to conventions. So my goatee might be going away very soon, because I want to be able to wear a bat suit again. I've almost lost enough weight.
You're not going to go Cesar Romero and just keep it. You know what
I
I mean?
Just paint it. I'm just gonna
paint it. You know what I mean?
Put base all over it. Yeah.
I mean, come on. You and I both love Cesar Romero's Joker. Just come on, go for it, man. Go for it. I always think it's funny when people will actually like criticize him for it. And I'm like, dude, that's what makes him so special. You know what I mean? Come on,
Well, his big thing is he basically had a career because he was one of the early Latin lovers on cinema, and he was not about to get rid of his mustache because it was part of his, persona. So yeah,
right. I remember as a kid not realizing that. I was like, what's going on? Joker's not supposed to have a mustache, is he? But that story I've always enjoyed personally. It's just, hey, he was like, I'm not changing my look. Screw you guys. All right. Chris Roberts is in the house. He says, "Hi guys, long time no see." Hey Chris, good to see you. Thank you for commenting and joining us on the show. Asia mentions, she says, Mary says hi. She says, "We have you on the 60-inch TV." And I'm like, oh no, maybe I should turn my camera off then. You got me on the 60-inch. So
maybe I should,
but that's awesome. I like doing that myself. And one of the problems with it is I'm like, how are you commenting? Because this is what I do. I will have my phone next to me, because I do like to watch. I like to watch the live streams on because I have a 65-inch TV too. And I'm like, I want to watch it there. I don't want to watch it on this thing, which is, I do the show from my laptop, and I hate watching anything on my laptop, to be honest with you. So I'm like, I got a 65-inch screen. I want to watch it over there. And the funny thing is, you're commenting, and the thing is, like, I have some difficulty because what I do is I have my phone with me, and so I'll have the stream going on my phone so I can participate in the chat. You know what I mean, and talk to people, while the thing's going on. So I'm curious what you're doing, so you're able to comment while you're watching on your smart TV. Let's see. Yeah, Gap does confirm he is live. So if you're not liking our show, you can always go over there. But we're all friends here, and Gap's been on the show many times. In fact, we need to probably have Gap on the show officially at some point. Assuming he's not going to keep competing with us all the time. One of these days we got to have him on the show. So
that sounds like a plan. And
Mott's did answer that question, and again, it's interesting because that's kind of what I was thinking. He says it was slave labor comics, which I'm not even familiar with that publisher. So
no, slave labor was around. I think slave labor is still around in some form. I haven't heard that name in a while, but slave labor published quite a few comics, and that's interesting, David. I'm trying to remember. Didn't they publish the Gargoyles comic too? Now I got to look this up.
That's one that I don't think I'm familiar with. I'm trying to remember, but I don't think I ever had any of their comics. But there's a lot of obscure comic book publishers out there. I mean, at one point, independent comics, especially like in the wake of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, there was that whole deluge of like black and white, independent comics that came out after Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I remember when it flooded the market. I remember at one point, I think it was Antarctic Press had the Robotech license, and they were doing black and white Robotech comics. Like, it was crazy what was going on, because I'm like, that's like an established brand. You know what I mean? It wasn't like a new independent thing or anything like that. So there were a lot of comic book publishers back in the day. I think like talking like late 80s, early 90s, that kind of stuff.
So this, I think, is absolutely hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. So when I do a search for slave labor comics Gargoyles, because I thought they published the Gargoyles comics. So I bet they published the Gargoyles comics around the same time they were doing Tron. One of the most hilarious things to me about this, because I still don't understand what the deal was with the Gargoyles comic, but when you do it, you get this immediate hit from Google, and it brings up some of the comic images, and it's got a rundown. And okay, it does say it. Okay, because it was so weird, because it's like, why is Greg Weissman not listed? Because Greg Weissman was like one of the creators of Gargoyles. He was a producer at Disney. I basically was doing conventions at the same time he was promoting his Gargoyles comic. And it's so funny because they've got, publisher, pencilers, colorists, letterers, editors. And I'm like, where in the hell is Greg's name? Like, he's literally the co-creator of Gargoyles, and he came out to write the stupid book, and you're not even going to list him, but he's actually listed in the main write-up at the top. I tell you, these Wikipedia articles are just, they're good for a laugh.
And the funny thing is, I do remember there being a Gargoyle comic. So
it was actually
I do remember
pretty
that.
good.
So,
pretty
but
good.
I just don't.
Yeah.
I guess I just don't remember the publisher's name. Chris out there in Facebook land says, I wish I could watch on a 60-inch. I'm always at work when you guys stream, so my phone it is. Laugh out loud. Chris, we appreciate you looking at us in any format. And actually, it does help us to some extent, because it's nice to know for people that are watching us in different formats, how your experience is, because we want to be good. We have to be good on all of them. It's a live streaming show. We have to be good on the phone. We have to be good on your 60-inch. We have to be good on your laptop, so, but we appreciate any format that you're checking us out on, and we're glad that you're here.
Very cool. Very cool. And David Motz does say that they did do Gargoyles, and yeah. Thanks for that, David. Yeah, I thought they did. And Slave Labor published a bunch of interesting stuff. I just can't remember if they're still around. And then Asia actually backs me up. She's like, Gargoyles, 15 issues by Greg Weissman, a continuation of the TV series. And she got that from Wikipedia. Thank you, Asia. Yeah, and
so it's one of those continuation things. It's not one of those things that was going on during the show. And okay, gotcha. Okay.
And that's always the best stuff. And that's one of the fun things that's always great about the comics, because whenever typically they publish a comic book version of something, it usually is a continuation. And that's what I always love the most. And for those people who may not be familiar, like Greg Weissman, has done all kinds of stuff. He was actually a writer at DC. If you enjoyed like the Who's Who, Greg actually wrote a lot of those Who's Who's back in the day, the little entries for the characters. He actually co-wrote, I think, what was it? I think he actually co-wrote with Carrie Bates a whole bunch of stuff, like Captain Atom. And one of the most interesting things about Greg's history, for people who may not be familiar, is that he actually was a writer on Jem and the Holograms. So,
okay.
Yeah. So,
Gap out there on YouTube had another comment. Said, I just featured you and some other people on my Quick After Dark with Gap. You guys are just awesome. I don't have a time slot yet. I just out on a whim decided to stream. And he goes on to say, I want to interview you too. I'm on board, Gap. As long as it's not during my show, I'm on board. So we are. I'll speak for myself first. I'd love to be on your show. I think you are doing some really fun stuff on your channel. I have checked it out. You're one of the people that I have been checking out, and I think you're actually doing really well. Dave, do you want to answer him now, or do you want to answer some other time?
No, I would love to do an interview with Gap, and I think it'd be great to actually have Gap on the show too. I think that would
absolutely.
be really cool.
I already mentioned that, Gap. You definitely have an open invitation. We'd love to talk about what you're doing. You know what I mean? With like I said, the stuff I've mostly seen is you've been doing a lot of unboxing. Like I think they even do that, right? They have the YouTube thing where they're competing with TikTok now. They call them like micros or something like that. And I've been seeing Gap doing a lot of that. And it's just quick unboxings of all this cool stuff that he's been getting lately, because he's got some real cool stuff.
Talking about unboxing, in the midst of moving, because a friend of mine saved it, I actually have a box that has my artwork on it back there. That's pretty cool. I was going to pitch it. He's like, no, we got plenty of room. I'm like, sure. He's like, oh, hell yeah. When I, during my time at DC, they actually took some of the artwork that Scott and I did for DC and repurposed it. And they actually used one of our Superboy and Legion superhero covers actually as the main artwork, actually for, the little hero clicks. For the Legion of Superheroes hero clicks that came out. So it's on the boxes, it was on the packaging that you saw in the gaming stores and everything, and it was really fun.
Gotcha. Chris had a question. He said, speaking of continuations, did you guys see the trailer for the new Rescue Rangers? Chris, I saw part of it and I was disgusted and I turned it off. But if you want me to do a review of it next week, I will do it. I will sacrifice and I will do it. Dave, have you seen it?
No, because someone I know said that it looked horrific and awful, and so I stayed away from it. So
I will say this: that I saw a little bit of it, and the concept I think is completely stupid. The concept is like it's like Chip and Dale, like, they were actors in Rescue Rangers, and, it's like the aftermath of like, now they've lost their fame and their fortune. And it's just like, what is this? And it's animation and live action. Chip and Dale are actually in different styles, like one's 2D, the other one's 3D, because he got the 3D makeover, and the other one is staying true to 2D. It looks like a disaster from what I saw, but and I'll have to talk to Dave if you guys want us to do a full trailer review. I mean, I did Picard. If I've done Picard, I can do anything. So, you know what I mean?
Oh, God. Yeah.
And Gap says it. Ugh. Now, he just says Ugh Rescue Rangers. I hope you say Ugh Rescue Rangers reboot, because I love the show. When it came out, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good.
Rescue Rangers came out during that same time period that we had all these great shows like DuckTales and Darkwing Duck. And
Disney Afternoon. Disney Afternoon was great stuff.
I loved all that stuff.
Yeah, Tailspin. I mean, that was a great show. And I always thought it was neat because they were taking these classic characters and they were like recasting them in kind of new roles to make them, quote unquote, fresh and new. This stuff isn't fresh and new. This is just trite garbage as far as I'm concerned with the movie that's coming out. Asia says, I was yelling at it. She says, yelling the disrespectful attention from Seth Rogen, that sausage party jerk. So there you go. There you go.
All right.
Interesting. I think we need to move on to one of
our
next stories.
Let's move on. All right. So our next topic we're going to be talking about tonight is actually what in the hell is going on with Star Trek 4? Didn't we already get a Star Trek 4? Wasn't Star Trek 4 some people's favorite Star Trek movie? Like, weren't there whales in it? Like, what are we talking about with Star Trek 4, Eric? Because I'm friggin' confused.
Yes, and you should be. And we were talking about this a little bit behind the scenes. I'm kind of annoyed that this has become the way. I think it's just the lazy way people in the anti-social media age just reference things. There was a Star Trek 4, Star Trek 4, the Voyage Home. It's one of the best Star Trek movies. For some people, it is the best Star Trek movie. It's one of the most successful movies financially, but we're now, because people are lazy, this is what we're talking about now when we're saying Star Trek 4. This is from the playlist.net, and here's the title of the article. It says, Star Trek 4, quote unquote, Paramount loses negotiation leverage as cast is reportedly shocked by announcement. And this just came out February 23rd, folks. It says, following a successful reboot of the franchise, Paramount has been trying for years to get a fourth, quote unquote, Star Trek movie together. Of course, it wouldn't be fourth. Really, it's what, like 12th, 14th? I can't remember how many Star Trek. It says previous incarnations attempted to bring back the cast led by Chris Pine as James T. Kirk. and hoped to employ time travel conceits to include Chris Hemsworth, who plays Kirk's father, seen in the initial 2009 Star Trek reboot by J.J. Abrams. Talks broke down over salary with the cast. Star Trek Beyond wasn't all that financially successful, and the studio had to hold a hard line over cost. And the studio attempted to consider other Star Trek films, including one from Quentin Tarantino and screenwriter Mark L. Smith, and another from Noah Hawley. I think at some point we've touched on all of those different incarnations.
Yeah, we've talked about all of them.
It says, now things have changed. Paramount seems to have inadvertently put themselves in the same position and an even greater disadvantage. Last week, during Paramount's big Investor Day event, the studio announced they were planning to shoot Star Trek 4, quote unquote, by the end of 2022 with the original cast. Gosh, I hate all that, don't you? Star Trek 4 original cast. No, this is not original cast. No, this is not Star Trek 4.
No.
Okay.
No. Sorry. I'm sorry.
It says Pine et al. Returning. So that's what we're talking about here, folks. We're talking about the Chris Pine version. You can see the image here. If you're on the audio show, we're looking at the image of the reboot cast, the 2009 Star Trek. Okay, that's what we're talking about here. And says, just let me get to the end of the paragraph. But one major problem. The announcement was apparently premature on Paramount's part. The Hollywood Reporter revealed that agents representing Pine, Zachary Quinto, Simon Pegg, Carl Irvin, Zoe Saldana, and John Cho were just as surprised as fans that their clients would be returning for a fourth film, since no talks had resumed and certainly no deals were in place. I wish I had the Price is Right thing, the little, because really, Paramount, really? You didn't talk to the actors about this, and now you played your hand? I mean, come on, talk about bad business, man. That's amateur hour. You know what I mean? What do you think? What do you think, Dave? Are you speechless?
So I'm a little stunned, and I was gonna reference. I said that sometimes they refer to this as the Kelvin timeline.
The Kelvin timeline. That's what we're talking about. Yeah. For those of us that are true Trekkies, we're talking about the Kelvin Trump. Yeah.
Let me start off by talking about the part of this that annoys me. I am very annoyed by the fact that they're just referring to it as Star Trek 4, because it is not Star Trek 4. It is well past Star Trek 4. No, I'm sorry. No. And then the second thing is, you cannot use the term original cast referencing Star Trek, because this is not the original cast. These are the people they brought in to try and, keep these characters relevant in their mind, even though I think those characters have never stopped being relevant in my mind. And I didn't hate all of the new Trek movies. Like, I liked the first one. I thought the first one was fun. I didn't really care for Into Darkness. Oh shoot, what was the last one? I thought the last one was kind of fun. It had some weird parts in it, but I actually liked the last one.
Beyond?
Too. Beyond. I thought Beyond was fun. No, you can't say original cast. This is not the original cast of Star Trek. I'm very sorry. That's
nor is this Star Trek 4.
No, it is not Star Trek 4. Nowhere near Star Trek 4. Again, one of the greatest Star Trek movies ever made. Are you kidding? You cannot. No, you can't do that. So not cool. As far as the original cast coming back and being shocked because they were left out of the announcement, I hate to say it, but in modern times, this is not the first time this has happened. I think it might be the first time it's happened with this many important cast members in your franchise. That's a lot of people to leave out of the conversation. It's like they didn't talk to nobody. That's weird. You didn't talk to anybody.
This is the stupidest thing. I shouldn't say it. I mean, Hollywood does incredibly stupid things. But, from my perspective, as someone who even, is involved in film production, as someone whose title is chief financial officer of his film company, I'm like, what the heck are you guys thinking? There's got to be somebody that's kind of like me at Paramount, just sitting there like giving evil eyes at the desk every day to the marketing manager. What the hell is wrong with you? You know what I mean? You know how much harder you made my job Do you know how much harder you just made my job? I feel for that guy or that gal that's in that position right now. Just like, what are you doing to me? What are you doing? Everybody. I mean, those names I just gave you, that's the entire living cast. That's everybody. It's like they didn't include anybody before they made this announcement. They didn't get anybody's, there's a really interesting story of the behind the scenes of, the Disney takeover of Star Wars. And one of the things that George Lucas did to get that $4 billion was he called Mark Hamill. He called Harrison Ford. You know what I mean? He called everybody from the original cast and said, hey, you interested in doing more Star Wars? They were like, yeah. $4 billion, folks. It ain't, you know what I mean? It's not rocket science. It really isn't. It's not rocket science. That gave him leverage in the sale to Disney. That's why he got $4 billion. Okay. So I'm just from the business sense. I'm just like, plus all the fan stuff that we're talking about too. Like you said, the Star Trek. Why is it Star Trek 4 exactly? Because it's the fourth in the JJ series. You know what I mean? Original cast? No, this is not the original cast. You know what I mean? Come on.
And to be honest with you, I'm a Tarantino fan, and I'm tired of having the Tarantino Star Trek like paraded out in front of us again. That is, I have a feeling that's never moving forward. Can we stop talking about it? Can we stop talking about it until it's really, really a thing? Like, I feel like they keep rolling that out just to troll us. Like, just look, we all know it's probably not happening. So just stop talking about it, please. Just, it was an interesting idea that was, a couple years ago. Let's just stop talking about it. And like I said, I like the new cast because that's what they are. This is not the original cast. This is the new cast. I like the new cast. I would be curious to see another Star Trek movie from them. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't like the time travel thing because they want to put Thor in the movie. Like, no, let's not. No, can we do something else other than that? Because I don't know
if if he came in as Thor, if Hemsworth was Thor,
I would totally
be on board for this.
But I'm just thinking, like, Chris Hemsworth when he played Kirk's father,
dad,
compared to now.
So much. But if he's Thor, hey, you heard it here first in the Retro Rogues Live. If they're talking about having him as Thor, that might work. And maybe that's the leverage they have. Who knows? We do have some comments I want to get to in the Rogues, the Rogues Gallery here. Asia says, Star Trek 4, The Search for More Money. That's what this is. It says, I love the Voyage Home. It's one of my faves to Wrath of Khan. And I'm in the same boat. Wrath of Khan is my absolute favorite. It's actually one of my favorite movies of all time, period. And then Voyage Home, I think, was a lot of fun. Very, very well done. And it's one of the most popular. Star Trek 4 is one of those movies that people that weren't even Star Trek fans liked. That's the best way to put it. And it really did cross that threshold. Chris Roberts says, laugh my ass off. Yes, it's awesome because of Spock and the quote unquote colorful language part. And Robert backs him up saying, damn right. Damn right. I know Robert actually is a big fan of the 2009 Star Trek. And I actually do own the 2009 Star Trek. I actually was very much on board initially, but I boycotted the second one when I heard JJ saying all the comments he was saying about not liking Star Trek and he's a Star Wars guy. And then, of course, I haven't even seen it, so I'm not even going to put the spoiler alert thing up there, but they ripped off the real Star Trek 2 Wrath of Khan for JJ Star Trek 2, and it really upsets me. And I will never watch that movie because of it. I will never watch it. I have boycotted it. I have seen Beyond, but I will not watch that movie because I was so upset that JJ going out there trashing classic Star Trek, and then he copied it. I'm sorry, folks. That's immoral. That is hack behavior. That is the definition of a hack, So I will never watch that movie. But one thing I do like a lot, and one of the reasons I have the 2009 Star Trek in my collection, is I love Carl Urban's homage to DeForest Kelley, and that's what it is.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Carl Urban's, and he said it publicly that he grew up on the show. He watched it with his dad. That's where I started watching Trek, with my dad. There was so much in one of his interviews that I liked, and you can just see it. His performance is an homage, not just to McCoy, but to the actor DeForest Kelly. And you can see all that respect, as opposed to, I really like Simon Pegg, but his Scotty is horrible. That's not Scotty. You know what I mean? I'm just throwing it out there. To me, that is not Scotty at all. And I think Simon Pegg is great, but that's not Scotty. I mean, that's not, he can't compete with James Doohan. James Doohan was a badass. James Doohan was a war hero. He was on D-Day. You can't compete with James Doohan. I'm sorry, man.
Well, I was just going to say that Karl Urban is going to go down, I think, in time as one of our greatest genre actors. Between when you look at his performance as Dr. McCoy in the new Star Trek movies, because it's absolutely incredible. When you look at him playing Judge Dredd, when you look at him in Lord of the Rings, he's going to go down as one of our greatest genre actors.
You need to throw out the Dredd, because Dredd is so underrated and so underappreciated. His version of Dredd. Because it wasn't that successful at the box office, so a lot of people don't even know about his version of Dredd. You've got to check out Karl Urban's version of Dredd. His version of Dredd is amazing, and he keeps Eric's rule: he never takes the helmet off.
No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't.
He does not take the helmet off, and he talks about that. He talks about that in an interview with respect to the character, because he don't do that in the comics, so I'm not going to do it on film. So. Asia had another comment. She said, Star Trek 4 is my Temple of Doom. It's funny and dramatic at once. I think Hollywood tries to create drama to draw attention. Leaks on leaks to make it look like you got a scoop. The PR guy probably got fired the day after. I hope so. I'm sure they have a family to feed and all that stuff, but just looking at it from my perspective, as someone, involved in filmmaking, I'm like, what kind of a decision is that? Whew.
Yeah.
And these are probably people paid millions of dollars, Dave, to make bonehead decisions like this,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I find it's just, like I said, again, this is not the original cast, and this is Star Trek 4, not Star Trek 4. I'm very sorry.
Chris does bring up a good counterpoint that I think is worth addressing. He says, in regards to the what is it even called? What is
Darkness.
The darkness, right? Into Darkness.
Into Darkness.
He says, Into Darkness. Again, I'm boycotting that film, so I don't even care. But Chris, you said, I watch it only because I enjoy Benedict Cumberbatch. He is awesome. He is a real actor. That I will totally back that up, but I said why I won't watch it. But Benedict Cumberbatch is an amazing actor. I will say that. I agree with you on that. Robert says, easy, baby, easy. Laugh out loud. Robert, I'm passionate. You know that. He and I have got into it a couple times. It happens.
Well, and Into Darkness is one of those films, like I saw it, and I had a lot of different issues with it. I didn't hate it, which is difficult too, because Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan is actually my favorite movie of all time. It is my favorite movie of all time, period.
It's a perfect film. It is a perfect film.
But Into Darkness has some fun stuff, like Peter Weller is interesting in it. They try to kind of give us a little bit of backstory, although it doesn't quite work. Cumberbatch actually, his version of Khan is interesting. I just don't feel like it is the Khan. Ricardo Montalban will always be Khan to me. There's just something about.
I agree with that.
Yeah,
100%.
it's
100%. 100%.
And the thing that makes Wrath of Khan fun too, and this is where I feel like they kind of missed the boat with Into Darkness, is the fact that it's one of the original cast members, essentially, of the original series reprising his role, because Ricardo Montalban was Khan in the original series, so he's back. There's that. It's that what I love, and Eric and I talk about this a lot. It's a continuation of the story. Yes. And that's what makes Khan so amazing, because it is the same guy. He is just as intimidating. He is just as powerful. He is just as manic. Like he is, and that's the thing. It's like, it's just so much fun to see him reprise that role. And there's that continuity. And the continuity for me is part of what makes Wrath of Khan so incredible. It's a great action movie too. So
100%. I mean, again, I think it's just the perfect film. Here's a real quick thing. I think I already gave an answer basically, but Chris asks, I think in comparison to original, Zach Quinto was the best of the cast. Obviously, I thought it was Carl Urban. What about you, Dave?
I'm going to say Carl Urban, but I thought that Zachary Quinto did a very good job as Spock. I know that he had a lot of conversations with Leonard Nimoy. You heard both Leonard Nimoy talk about it and Zachary Quinto talk about it. There's even that moment that I've heard in interviews where Zachary Quinto said that Leonard Nimoy whispered something in his ear to help him better understand Spock, and at that moment he got it. So that's the thing. This cast, I feel like, tried very hard and did a good job of bringing it forward. It's just, unfortunately, they've been in a couple films with some unfortunate decisions that were made in terms of the story. Because like Star Trek, like Star Wars is what I'm trying to say. The first film out of the gate is pretty good, but it's the ones after where you're kind of hitting these bumps, and it seems like they're not sure exactly what they want to do or where they want to go, and it creates a lot of unnecessary chop in the water. It's a weird expression, but I'll just use that. Chop in the water. There you go.
And Chris does mention, and I will put his name there. I also enjoyed Anton Yelchin as Chekhov.
He was good.
Not going to say anything bad about him. Tragedy what happened to that guy.
It was a tragedy for sure. But I thought he was good as Chekhov. And again, he's another one who, in interviews, he was with Walter Koenig. And they talked a lot.
I've seen that. I've seen the image of Walter Koenig visiting the set. So I've actually seen that. Yeah.
So, and that's really cool because that's the thing. They had the opportunity to meet with the original cast and try to, properly adapt and bring those characters forward. And there's a lot of them who did an incredible job. And I will give that to Anton Yelchin. I thought he was trying very hard to capture what Walter Koenig was doing. And it was a lot of fun. It's a different energy because he's a very different person, but I thought his Chekhov was a lot of fun. And there's a lot of fun scenes with him in between the first movie and especially in Beyond. Like, he's got a lot of great scenes of Beyond, actually, with him and Kirk and stuff. And it's fun. So.
Yeah, I agree. We've got one story left, Dave.
All right, one story, last story. We're going to talk about, there's been a lot of talk. I actually saw it and I mentioned it actually to Eric because, I'm a little confused about it because the story I read doesn't exactly match up with how the headlines make it sound. But to make a long story short, it looks like the Netflix Marvel MCU shows, they are now officially in canon, everybody. Could you put the spoiler up for just a second?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you.
Where is it?
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit of spoilers here. So if you have not watched Hawkeye and you have not watched Spider-Man No Way Home, you might want to dip away for a little bit and come back because these are going to be some spoilers. But it was always believed and discussed and said that the Netflix shows were in canon, that they were in canon with the MCU films, and they referenced the attack on New York and whatever. But because of some behind-the-scenes drama between, if I remember correctly, Ike Perlmutter and Kevin Feige, there was a division at one point. And Kevin Feige managed to get to the point where he proved his worth and everything to the point that he was able to get final say over what happens with the MCU instead of having to coordinate with the quote unquote TV division. Okay. And at that point, whether the Netflix shows were in canon or not in canon suddenly became in question. A lot of us have been wondering, like, does this count or does it not count? Well, we have now had that question answered. We had that answered in No Way Home. We had that answered in Hawkeye. And now we have even further confirmation that they're in canon because it looks like the Netflix shows are going to be leaving Netflix and actually coming over to Disney Plus. But there's some wrinkles in that story, isn't there, Eric?
Yes, and I have this article from CNET, and this is from yesterday, February 23rd. It says Marvel series from Netflix will join Disney Plus in Canada. No word yet on whether Daredevil, Jessica Jones, The Defenders, or Luke Cage will arrive on Disney Plus in the U.S. Goes on to mention Marvel TV series Jessica Jones, Daredevil, Iron Fist, Luke Cage, Punisher, and The Defenders will be joining Disney Plus in Canada on March 16th. Reports showing a press release from Disney said this on Wednesday. The news comes as those shows were recently revealed to be finally leaving Netflix at the end of February. So there's a little bit of a limbo thing going on. It says those MCU series were produced during pre-Disney Plus days, so they were made for Netflix. The TV shows were all canceled by Netflix by 2018, with the rights reverting back to Disney on February 28th. So according to that article, the Netflix rights have been terminated, and they as of the 28th, because this broadcast is on the 24th. As of the 28th, the rights do go back to Disney.
And it's interesting too, because,
by the way, I'm going to take the spoiler alert off now because we did have a comment where someone was muting. So no more spoilers. If you want to join us again, Maria, obviously you're on mute, but I took the spoiler banner off. So hopefully you'll come back to us as we talk about more of this business thing that's going on.
Yes, it's very much a streaming wars story. And it's interesting to me too, because, the Netflix shows are kind of hit or miss, with fans and different people. Like, for example, I can't give Daredevil a higher recommendation. Like, I cannot possibly recommend Daredevil more to anyone. If you want to see great superhero television done right, like, I feel like Daredevil is a perfect and great example of that. Season 1 and season 2 are absolutely incredible. The finale of season 3 is worth watching. Season 1 and season 2, like, season 3 absolutely gets crazy nuts awesome towards the finale. You have some of the best superhero performances actually in Daredevil, in my opinion, between Cox, who plays Daredevil, and Vincent D'Onofrio, who plays the Kingpin. Really, really great. The other shows, I liked Luke Cage. I liked Iron Fist. I'm one of those few people who probably liked Iron Fist more than other people, because I was seeing things in Iron Fist that they may or may not have been intentionally doing. I felt like someone was like picking up musical cues and homaging actually martial arts training videos actually from the 80s, but that's my weird psychopathic thing, probably seeing stuff that isn't there. But that's one of the reasons I appreciate Iron Fist. A lot of people really, really liked Jessica Jones, but I think a lot of people would be on the same page that John Barenthal's Punisher is absolutely incredible. So I would give the Punisher a high recommendation as well. But you have to watch Daredevil first. Season 1 Daredevil, season 2 Daredevil, then take a look at Punisher. But I think that's some of the best superhero television stuff I've seen. It's really, really good, and I would highly, highly recommend it. And I'm excited for this, but at the same point, it's always weird, Eric, the rights issues. What's going on with the rights? Like, Canada gets it on Disney Plus, but we don't here in the US. Like, why? Like, what
the bigger question in my mind is, the article states very clearly that the rights have reverted back to Disney. That's why they're putting it on Disney Plus in Canada. So the question in my mind, the very specific question is, if you're doing it in Canada, why aren't you doing it in the States? Why aren't you doing it in the United States? That just seems really weird to me, because in my mind, there's never been a question that these shows are canon. Because they established that in the very first season of Daredevil, which is the only one I've watched, by the way, folks. Daredevil first season's the only one of these shows I've watched, and I did enjoy it. I don't know. I've mentioned it before. I don't know why I didn't go back. I just didn't, because I did enjoy it. But they established in the very first episode of Daredevil that this is the aftermath of the invasion of New York, and they talk about it. So I always thought that was kind of weird that anybody was even questioning that. And that probably does go to what you were saying, Dave, is this kind of rights issue where kind of Disney maybe didn't want to say it was canon because they didn't have the rights back. That kind of a situation where they're like, Netflix still technically owns this show, so we don't want to give it to, I almost feel like that was a campaign by Disney themselves to kind of sabotage these shows while they were still at Netflix. Now they can make a really big deal when they ultimately do come to Disney Plus internationally and all these different places, because it's happening in Canada first for some reason. But come on, it's not going to be too long till all these shows are going to be on Disney Plus here in the States as well.
And here's the thing that's interesting, because what I've actually heard is it has to do with the power struggle actually within Disney itself and actually Marvel. Because as I understood it, is that Ike Perlmutter, who was the head of Marvel at the time, and Kevin Feige were clashing. I've heard that that's part of the reason why the Inhumans actually came out as bad as it did, is because they were kind of pushing on the TV division. They wanted it synced up with the movies, but because Kevin Feige, who was the person in charge of the movies, wasn't really in a position to really properly craft and control that so that it wouldn't mess up, what he was doing with the movies, was pushing back against having all the TV stuff tie in. And that was causing weird issues. And it was the battle between Ike Perlmutter and Kevin Feige that actually caused at one point for the Netflix stuff to seem like it wasn't in canon when originally it was always intended to be.
Just like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Exactly.
has a similar thing. It started out 100% in canon, and then out of nowhere, they were like, no, it's not.
Yeah, that's
Wait,
a
what?
perfect. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And it affects other things too. It affects like Runaways. It affects things like Cloak and Dagger. Like there's a lot of stuff that probably should have been in canon and synced up that apparently is not. And what's interesting too is what this also reminds me of. If Asia's still watching, she might have an interesting comment about this. It's interesting to me too, because what it reminds me of is you, Eric, will remember the Transformers comics published by Marvel back in the 80s when we were kids growing up. What's interesting is apparently because of that contract, actually, I think it was Hasbro. It was Hasbro, right?
Yeah, Hasbro owns
And the
Transformers.
Hasbro actually owned the rights to the comic book material. To the point that when IDW got the rights to publish Transformers, they also got the rights to publish all of the Marvel stuff, which is why they're out there in collections. It's literally that rights issue. Like Marvel paid for the rights to Transformers. They paid to produce those comics. They made that money. And you would think, well, obviously they own that content, right? But the reality of it is, no, they don't. Because of the contract, Hasbro owns the right to those stories, and that's how IDW was able actually to republish them. But if you notice, they pull all the Marvel indicia out. I have no idea how they handled, what was it, Transformers #3 with the guest appearance of Spider-Man. Like, how did they handle that? Like, I always wondered about, like, how did you get around that? Like, like that's an important part of the story. I'm really curious about that. But that's why that deal, it all goes back to these contracts, and it goes back to these deals and who owns the rights. It's a very important thing to keep in mind, especially when talking about stuff with the streaming wars as well.
I do want to remind you, Dave, per a previous conversation, that we are over the hour mark, but I do want to get to some of these comments in the Rogues Gallery. Yeah, Maria mentions, he says, now these good shows come on when I was thinking of leaving Netflix. For a while because of the price bump. It's almost $20 a month now. Sheesh. So Maria, you may be in reverse. If I'm misunderstanding your comment, you can correct me. But it's actually Netflix is losing all these shows. So they're going to Disney Plus in Canada. We can confirm that right now, that they are going to be showing in Canada on Disney Plus. So if you have one of those VPN things, hey, you know what I mean? If you have one of those VPN things and you have Disney Plus, you'll be able to watch these shows. But I can almost guarantee you, I mean, the article states specifically all the rights go back to Disney February 28th. So I don't think it'll be long. If you have Disney Plus and you want to watch these shows, you're going to be able to watch them on any Disney Plus. It's just right now, we can only confirm that Disney Plus in Canada is getting these shows. Netflix, they don't got them no more. Netflix lost these shows. It's over. Game over for Netflix. You know what I mean? As far as these shows that they themselves produce. Interesting situation. Chris Roberts.
Game over.
Game over. yeah, exactly. Chris Roberts says Daredevil 1, 2, 3. Punisher is a 1. Luke Cage is a wait. I think he's talking about the seasons. Okay, so Daredevil season 1, 2, 3. Punisher season 1. Luke Cage season 1, Jessica Jones season 1, Punisher season 2, Jessica Jones season 2, Luke Cage season 2, Defenders, and Iron Fist. That's my favorite seasons order. There we go. Okay, so that's what you're saying. So obviously he's a big Daredevil guy. which Daredevil started this particular sort of iteration, if you will. So that makes
it's
a lot
great
of sense.
version of Daredevil.
So it looks like his least favorite then is
Iron
Luke
Fist.
Cage 2. Is it right? Oh no, Defenders
the
and then
last
Iron
one,
Fist.
Iron Fist. Yeah, Iron Fist is everyone's least favorite. I know. I'm weird. I enjoyed
Interesting.
Iron
So
Fist.
he didn't like Defenders. That's interesting to me.
Yeah.
I've only seen the first season of Daredevil. He said, Chris also said the actors who played Black Bolt on Inhumans is an awesome actor.
That is actually Captain Christopher Pike, by the way, everybody. That is Anson Mount, who was also in Hell on Wheels. He is an absolutely fantastic actor.
He is a fantastic actor. I have not seen
actor. Tremendous.
I haven't seen his Black Bolt, but actually, Hell on Wheels is the one that I'm most familiar with, and he is fantastic in that show. Mott says, I enjoyed all the Netflix series, and I like how they teamed them up as the Defenders. I just hope Disney Plus doesn't Boba Fett this Marvel series. So interesting. I think Mott's might be of the same mind as myself when it comes to Boba Fett. Asia brought up something that I actually was even thinking when you were talking, Dave, which is he says also Transformers ran even longer in England, and that is a total other continuity that I've only recently even been exposed to because I've been watching some Transformer videos on YouTube. But yeah, there's this entire in the UK, the comic book rights went to a completely different company, and they have their own continuity over there. That's really interesting, actually. The stuff that I checked out. And there are some good YouTube videos where they discuss that. And it's funny because like the Transformer channels, they will treat that UK continuity just as much as the cartoons, just as much as the Marvel continuity. Like the hardcore Transformer fans, they really like it. They like the UK stories too. So I think that's kind of a cool thing to throw out there. And Maria says she's got me, so we're on the same page. She did get it backwards, so all good. That's why we're here for you, the Retro Rogues. We're here to keep you straight, so you know exactly where you need to go, what you want to do. If you want to see these shows, and you're not in Canada, you can get a VPN, and then you can watch. If you have Disney Plus, you can go ahead and watch the Canadian version of Disney Plus. But I can almost guarantee you, it will eventually be on anything Disney Plus. Disney's not going to just sit on these rights and do nothing with it, especially in regards to the spoilers we will not mention that we already talked about, right? So there's already been some stuff, and we won't get into spoilers anymore, but we've discussed it.
Interesting.
And Gap does mention in terms of Netflix, which this is relevant because in a lot of ways this is kind of a streaming war story, because it literally is the two main players in the streaming wars. One taking a show away from somebody else, right? Gap mentions it's crazy they are going to turn off a lot of people with the price increases, and that's a good point in the context of the streaming wars. I mean, we just did a story where we were talking about for the first time ever, the Disney Plus actually beat Netflix in terms of their new subscribers. In other words, Disney Plus is still way behind in total subscribers, but for the first time, they had a bigger jump basically than Netflix, and Netflix really kind of underperformed. So we've been talking about it since for a long time because we used to do a lot of streaming wars coverage. It's between Disney Plus and Netflix. For sure. I mean, those two really stand out in the streaming wars, and Netflix has acknowledged it. I mean, they're like, that's the one we got to watch. That's the one that can take us down, and we need to be real careful about.
There you go. And James Thompson, James is in the house. Hey, James. And he agrees with me. He thought Iron Fist was pretty good. See, I enjoyed Iron Fist. Was it perfect? No. But there was still a lot of fun stuff in it. And actually, in my opinion, the best episode actually in Luke Cage season 2 is the one where they actually give us the Heroes for Hire, and Iron Fist shows up and spends an entire episode running around with Luke Cage. I'm going to tell you right now, that's what they should have done from the beginning. Those guys had great charisma. That was easily the most fun episode. We got to see them do kind of their team up moves and stuff. Like, I'm like going, why weren't you guys doing this from the beginning? Because this is for those of us who grew up in that Bronze Age of comics, reading Luke Cage, reading Iron Fist, and then reading Heroes for Hire, that's what I wanted to see. So I would have loved to have seen at least more than one episode of those two guys teaming up. That would have been hella fun.
Yeah, and Gap also agrees. He says Iron Fist was entertaining, but he also had another comment where he says Disney will now be Disney cash signs. There you go. That's exactly right.
That would be an interesting rebrand if Disney just came out and just started calling themselves Disney Money.
Disney Money. I had Disney Money. Did you ever have Disney Money? I had Disney dollars. Did you ever have those?
Oh no, I didn't. I know what you're talking about.
Remember that?
No, I didn't. I do.
I actually I thought that was the coolest thing when I was a kid, was getting the Disney dollars, and I loved the design and everything. Yeah, they had their own currency at one point. I don't know if they still do that, but
maybe they'll pull a Prince and they'll just become a dollar sign. They'll be the studio formerly known as Disney.
Yeah, they'll do the
dollar sign.
That's the company formerly known as Disney, and it's just a dollar sign.
It's a dollar sign.
and it's called the company formerly known as Disney.
Yep. Yeah.
At this point, sometimes I actually feel like they should do that, because there are times I feel like they are destroying the legacy of Walt Disney. But that's a discussion for another time.
Yeah. And then Asia's got the timeline over here for us, actually, for Transformers. Marvel, the original publisher, Dreamwave, then IDW published Transformers after Dreamwave went bankrupt. Yeah, the Dreamwave bankruptcy, I will be nice and I will not say anything about.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, there you go. Cool.
And Gap, no, I don't have them anymore. He says, don't spend all those Disney dollars, Eric, all in one place. I think those are actually pretty collectible now. I wish I'd kept mine, because I think those are collector's items now.
Interesting.
Disney dollars.
Interesting.
I don't know if they still do it. I'm curious, because I haven't been to Disneyland in a long time.
Huh. So you're saying my old Chuck E. Cheese tokens might have some value?
I don't know about that. I don't know about that.
I probably still have a few of those somewhere. So
I know I specifically kept a few just because it's nostalgia for me. You know,
yeah.
I think we lost our last Chuck E. Cheese a couple years ago. Actually, they were still kind of holding on, and there was I think one still left in the West Valley, and I think now I don't think we have any Chuck E. Cheese in the Phoenix metro area anymore. So, hey, look, the Disney, the Rogues Gallery always keeps us honest. Mott's has an answer to my question. He says they discontinued Disney dollars in 2016.
All right. Well, there you go.
So, in other words, I should have kept my Disney dollars, because there's probably somebody that would want them, you know. Plus, they were cool. I just remember liking them. I like having, Mickey there, just like George Washington. It just was cool to me. So,
all right, very cool. All right, so that's going to be it for our stories, unless anyone in the Rogues Gallery has anything else they would like to add. We're probably going to be moving to the intro here. I think this is definitely a fun episode. A lot of activity. It always makes it more fun and entertaining for us when those of you in the Rogues Gallery have a lot to say. We always like to encourage you to please comment from wherever you are. Although now, because of recent developments, you can't comment from wherever you are, which is the reason I stopped saying that, which kind of sucks.
Yep.
Gap says, you're dating yourself, Dave. Chuck E. Cheese. I know. I'm not a young man.
They were still around. I mean, I took my kids to Chuck E. Cheese. Like I said, it was only a couple years ago. The last Chuck E. Cheese in my area went down. So
yeah. I remember when Chuck E. Cheese was new, and to back up something from earlier in the show, the first time I remember going in there and playing Tron the video game. I quite like Tron the video game. I tell you all a funny story about Scott here real quick before we go to the outro. So Scott Clark, a good friend of mine, fantastic comic book artist, worked on Stormwatch back in the 90s for Image. I mean, just incredible career. Worked on all kinds of stuff. We lost him way too soon, in my opinion. And it was so funny because Scott used to always talk about that Tron video game because he loved it. He loved the Tron video game. And we actually just recently passed the anniversary of his passing. But I've been thinking about him a lot lately, and he used to always talk about that Tron video game. And one of the craziest things was right after he signed his exclusive deal, because with DC, and we were both at DC for about 5 years or so. When he signed his exclusive deal with DC, the first thing he did, he bought that Tron video game. He used to have it in his living room. It was right down from the stairs that went to the second floor at his house. And I remember I would go out to his house, and we would sometimes spend like 2 to 3 days to sometimes a week in the studio, his studio together, kind of working on stuff. And all hours of the night, you could hear him playing that Tron video game. And I always thought it was funny because he talked so much about it, and he did eventually get one, which I thought was really cool. The old
That's
arcade
awesome.
one.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
he really liked it. So
yeah, it's a classic game.
Yeah,
very hard game, by the way, too. I've played it, and it's very, very difficult.
I didn't understand his fascination with it because I played it, you know, when I was a kid, and I liked it, and I would play it with him sometimes, you know, or he'd like challenge me to, you know, see what I could do with it. But I could freaking play that video game to save my life. I love Tron, but I could not play that video game. And I'm much more of a I don't know, I'm much more of a the 4-player Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I'm a Street Fighter guy. Like that's just kind of more my speed. But man, he loved that friggin' game. And I thought that was really cool. All right, cool. All right,
it's a great story. Great story, Dave.
All right, okay. Let's go ahead and move to the outro then, if that sounds good.
Sounds good to me.
Cool. All right. So I want to thank all of you for hopefully watching. Well, we're not going to say listening because we're probably not going to put this out as an audio show either. But I want to thank you for watching this episode, the Retro Rogues Live. Again, my name is Dave Beatty. I've been one of your hosts. If you're curious to see and learn more about me, I'm going to point you actually to davebeatty.com. That's right, www.davebeaty.com, davebeatty.com. Go over there, check it out. A lot of fun things over there. You can see samples of my comic book work. You can see samples of my sketch card work. You can read my crazy bio for some reason if you feel like doing that. A lot of fun information. My blog has got tons and tons of stuff. If you feel like you want to see something that's newer than what you typically see on my website, go to the blog. There's all kinds of crazy content on the blog. But I want to thank you again for watching this episode of Retro Rogues Live. I also want to thank, as always, my great co-host, Mr. Eric Alexander, for, as always, being on here, providing his unique point of view and perspective on all these fun pop culture topics we like to talk about here on the show. Please, Eric, tell the folks where they can learn more about you on the interwebs.
Well, I'm most active on Twitter. You can find me there at BassGod14. That's at BASSGOD14. That's also the official YouTube. That's also the official Twitch. So if you make comments on those platforms, more likely than not, I'll be the one responding to you. My DMs are wide open on Twitter. I do take suggestions from the Rogues Gallery. I've done it several times. We'll talk about articles you want to talk about. If you have stories you want to talk about, let me know. And that's always the best way to get in touch with me. Mott says, cool story. Thanks for sharing earlier, Dave. Chris Roberts mentions, laugh out loud, I have the Ninja Turtles 1-Up arcade at work. Oh, that's sweet, Chris. Oh, I would love to have that. That is awesome, Chris. I would love that. Wish I had the space.
Crazy awesome.
Mott also says, good night, all. Gap, you were too kind. He says, best show on YouTube. Gap, maybe you have the best show on YouTube. We're gonna have to check it out. And then Hollywood says, good night, Motts. Great show, guys. Chris says, great show. Night, everyone. Great show as always. We appreciate everybody in the Rogues Gallery. And I am going to go ahead and give the last word to Gap because I'm going to look this up. He says, OMG, did you guys hear about the Street Fighter controversy? I'm sure you did. Gap, I did not, but I'm going to leave you with the last word because I'm going to go check it out.